Radio.
Wait, the setup, like, this is impressive.
I know, we try.
Is this all your own gear?
Oh, this
is built up over time.
This is literally the only reason we have this is this man here.
Do you want the door closed or
Yes,
for
please.
acoustics?
Just close it. It's fine. It's good enough.
All right.
But I started with a single. Well, when I told the district like 10 years ago, I told the district, "Hey, I'd like to do a podcast." You can put on your nice headphones there. I told the district I wanted to do a podcast, and like
check. Yeah.
Just a couple days later, through the district mail, they sent me a Snowball microphone that they had somewhere, just a USB mic.
Yeah. And was it any good?
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like it was better than nothing.
Well, honestly, the quality for USB mics have grown exponentially now. Like they're quite something.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
So, like the first recording I did, if you look back at episode 0, it was testing that mic out in the staff room, and our custodian Cecilio, who's been here for years and awesome guy. I just asked him, have you seen the new Star Wars trailer for Force Awakens?
So that tells you you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. And he was like, no, I have never seen any Star Wars at all. I'm like, what?
We're at that generation now, right? Like it is interesting to kind of have those conversations, with, like especially even with some kids now. And it's like, have you ever watched Star Wars? Like, no.
Yeah. I've stopped doing Bueller.
Yeah, nobody knows what that
is.
is.
Dude, I dropped Hakuna Matata today and to grade 9s, and it did not land.
Yeah, see, when it dies in front of you, that's a humbling experience.
I was like,
you bombed.
I said, hey, and if you've submitted all your assignments in already, then you know what? Hakuna Matata. Does everybody know what that means? Good job? No, but yeah, you're kind of on the right track. Anyone else? Hakuna Matata? You're okay. Anyway, it means don't worry. Watch Lion King. How is kids not watching Lion King now?
Yeah. So they haven't seen the Lion.
I don't know. My parents made me watch Snow White and Cinderella. Anyway.
Okay. Absolutely.
And frankly, the abusive relationship with Frozen I had with having 2 daughters, which you could speak to, God. I've got PTSD from that movie.
Well, thank goodness they're being paid for the next 2. They've got contracts now.
But it was funny. There was something about Frozen because they're building like a whole Frozen theme portion of Disney now. Yeah. And just talking to my SA, and she's got 2 young boys. And they're like, I want to say like 9 and 7. And I'm like, do they like Frozen? She's like, oh, yeah. Like they love it. Like I think every kid loves Frozen is... I don't know how Cinderella was perceived 80 years ago, but... whether it's Cinderella or Snow, you kind of look at your OG4, right? Mm-hmm. Your Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, and Bambi. Bambi. Wasn't there another princess too in the OG4?
Oh yeah.
Or Cinderella,
Sleeping
Snow White,
Beauty, Snow White.
Maybe it's just 3.
No,
can't think of any other.
I know because I can't get my head off of Rumpelstiltskin.
Disney princess, original Disney princesses,
like OG Disney princess. Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella.
What was the one who lived under the sea? Ariel.
That's later.
But that was kind of like in the 90s. You kind of got the rise of Belle.
And
Mulan.
Tiana.
Mulan. Yeah. But I mean, I feel like it was Beauty and the Beast that really kind of reset the market for Disney, and then they had that run of like Little Mermaid, or maybe it was Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and then Lion King, like boom, 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 like.
Yeah,
that was a pretty good run.
This podcast does cover a lot of ground. That
we
3
talk
guys are now talking about Disney movies and princesses.
That's what we planned to do.
James Cybulski, you're pretty familiar with podcasting and these microphones, right?
Yeah.
Pretty comfortable with everything.
Are we recording now?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's do it. All right.
I go live right away.
Let's do it.
Well, not live, but
Yeah, he had to be careful because I occasionally say things I probably
I just want to make sure. Where are we betting? What are we allowed to say?
People don't understand. I keep blackmail material on me at all times.
Yeah, this is a teacher's podcast, so we got to keep it clean.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
I basically
less editing.
Thank you.
Less editing too.
I basically can never retire because Kung has probably got the goods on me for any number of transgressions. So.
Well,
you don't even know.
Don't get divorced. There's another reason to.
Fair.
I had some kids today ask me, like, Mr. Cybulski, do you, are you a millionaire? Like, some of them have started to Google me and started to kind of find stuff about what I've kind of done professionally prior to going down the road of education. And, like, are you a millionaire? I'm like, well, I'm not making $1 million annually. And I said, and if I was, I kind of paused, and the students look at me and they're like, you probably wouldn't be here. Probably not. Now, don't take that personally, but I'd just probably be busy with my other occupation at the time. Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you get into that with your students? Like, they didn't know you right away when you stepped in the room?
It's
or did they?
Good question. I used it as an icebreaker in the sense that this is who I am. I'm a student teacher. I am more on the mature side, closer to your parents' age, as opposed to being right out of school and still, fresh around the face and less wrinkles and less Arctic blonde. And so I kind of explained that I had worked in media and broadcasting for the last several years and had done some of this and that and working in sports. And I think the one thing that probably with this generation, especially with younger kids, the fact that I've been part of the NHL video game for the last number of years, it really kind of allows. So it's like, and for kids that don't necessarily play the NHL video game franchise, it's just like, what, for them, it's you're in a video game, right? It's just like, what? And so there's a little excitement there, but I thought we had kind of moved past it for the most part. I think the grade 11s seemed to be relatively unfazed by it. The students that I was, kind of working with and collaborating with over the last several months. But the grade 9s, it's interesting where the grade 9s have kind of started, like, there was just like a real buzz, particularly this week, like oh my gosh, like, I need your autograph before you leave, and it's like, okay, well we'll cross that bridge when we get to the finish line. But there was all of a sudden a little, and then it's the boys, it's the girls, and now they're all working on an industrial revolution project, and I can see on a bunch of computers and working with technology this week that they're Googling me and there's pictures of me, and I'm just like, hey, look, I was not alive during the Industrial Revolution, so let's make sure we are productive. I may be older, but I was not alive during the Industrial Revolution. So going down that road with them, and then even just, I think what I'm starting to find is when I walk through the hallways, I think the word has kind of spread in the sense that other kids have figured out who I am, whether it's some gamers or just other kids through word of mouth, where there was a student who was in a counselor's room, and as I walked by, they're like, hey, Mr. Cybulski, I'm like, hey, what's up? And like, I don't think I've crossed paths with this student before. And then the counselor kind of followed up with, I hear you're famous. And well, that's kind of a subjective term, but, and then, this kid pulls out his phone and he's showing the counselor, and now the counselor, oh my gosh, was this for real? And it's like, oh, okay. So
the counselor now wants your autograph.
Yeah. So it's funny. It is kind of funny. So
is this something you're used to like every day, or is this something new to you? The attention.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I don't think there's I think that without sounding superficial or the risk of sounding arrogant, being a public figure to a degree over the last 20 plus years, and I say that just in the sense that I had an occupation that has provided visibility in the sense that whether it was on radio, people could hear me, whether it's in television, people could see me, whether it's digitally, there's that component as well. So having a platform that people might be familiar with me that I may not have encountered otherwise, personally, you get recognized. And I think it was a nice icebreaker. I remember that this is years back. I was doing sideline reporting for community television for Carleton Ravens football games when back before the team had initially folded and then they came back. But I remember going to Oliver's, the campus bar at Carleton. Yuill's looking at
perhaps familiar with that venue.
And I think back, like standing in line for like almost an hour to get in on a Wednesday night. And I didn't even go to Carleton. And we get in there. And anyway, one of the football players who I had covered, he was a bartender at Oliver's. And I remember I got, waiting in line to get a jug of beer and get my pitcher. And as I get there, he kind of, recognize, he gets the jug and he's like, hey, I got this one. And he's like, I get a free jug of beer. And it was like the first, like, oh my God, I got free beer. And like, now we didn't even get paid doing community television, right? So like getting a free jug of beer was like, oh my God, this is the greatest job in the world.
I have arrived.
Yeah, it's totally, you're 20 years old, 19 years old, and you got a free jug of beer that would have cost a lot of money otherwise, right?
Especially at Oliver's.
Yeah, and so that was, sort of your first like, oh, I got, get recognized. And so I guess long story short, yes, you get used to it. Sometimes in random spots, I think these days, because I haven't been on television traditionally for almost a decade now. I was at Sportsnet doing Sportsnet Central, and then production shut down in 2016. And, for the better part of the last decade, it's been radio or podcasting or obviously the video game for the last 7+ years. So there's a different form of visibility, but I'm surprised. And I guess there's an element you walk down the street and people still, depending on the area, right? I think there's certain areas, like I think if you still go to the odd sporting event, somebody might recognize you because you're in a sporting realm around sporting fans. I think on the day-to-day, somebody might still recognize you in a restaurant, but I would say it's not over the top, like, people running over to, it's very mild mannered, and maybe there's people that recognize you and just don't say anything, but
it's not Tom Cruise level, just
I don't even know if it's Tom Smith level.
We were at the side of a pitch when our kids were playing soccer, and one of the other parents came up to me and said, "Hey, that's James Cybulski," and I was like, "Yeah, no, I know."
There was, about a year or so, a couple of years after you and I had our kids playing together. Do you remember the actor Neil McDonough?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've met him.
Neil lived in South Delta.
Yeah.
He lived in the area.
Yeah.
Anyway, his two daughters one year wound up playing for a season, and Neil was like, hey, I'm happy to be your assistant coach. And now he was on set doing one of those DC series at the time. So I didn't see him a whole lot, but we've got pictures like where Neil and I, like, here we are as the coaches right now. I mean, Neil's got a whole next level of fame, but here's a guy, Band of Brothers, and Desperate Housewives, and
a
Suits,
ridiculously nice guy,
right?
Yeah, very personal, like very personal, like very, and a guy who just there was a level of confidence that he just carried with himself. I didn't realize. Now I haven't talked to Neil since he left, but Neil. He was a pitcher, I think, at Syracuse University, got drafted in Major League Baseball, I think by Pittsburgh, and then kind of found acting. But he just carries himself with a sort of, and very recognizable, right? Like I just remember we were in, and I hadn't watched Band of Brothers, I hadn't watched Desperate Housewives, but I recognized
everything.
He's been in everything, and always a bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think I remembered him from Walking Tall. And anyway, I remember just kind of do a double take walking through a grocery store or walking through a field one day, and I was like, that looks a lot like that actor. And then lo and behold, his daughters wound up being on the soccer team with my daughter, and we coached together, and we stayed in touch for a few years. And I think actually it's funny, Brenda and I, where they used to live years back, we were walking the dog the other day, walking by there, and I think we had gone for a little après snack on one Christmas one afternoon. We had popped in for just. It was the year that George Michael died. I just remember the news had just broken that George Michael had died, and that was oh my gosh, George Michael's dead. What?
I met him in Tawasin, where what do they call them? Like soapbox races. They used to have these soapbox.
Down
Remember those?
down 8 or 6. Yeah, I've never.
Do they still have those?
I don't think they've had them.
No,
because we as a school we participated because Mark Brown, our amazing woodworking teacher. He used to craft these amazing, like you had the Millennium Falcon or the Ghostbusters truck or whatever. They were amazing. So I was at this thing, and my son was actually racing in one of them because he was small enough at that time.
Did these things have brakes?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah,
they would have to.
They're required.
Yeah.
They're required to have brakes. Okay. That's quite a hill.
I'm just thinking like something just bombing down the hill, right?
Stuff. Yeah.
Universal healthcare,
But yeah, his kids were. He has a lot of kids. But Neil's kids were in this thing as well.
Yeah, I think I want to say he had like 5.
Yeah.
At least 5. Yeah.
But him and
they
his
had
family,
2 nannies. I just remember they had 2 nannies. That tells you how many kids they had.
Right.
They had 2 full-time nannies.
Yeah. I was there with Mark Turpin.
Okay.
You met Mark Turpin.
Yeah.
So he
was Confederation unit savior. Yeah.
Yes. And he's a huge Band of Brothers fan. So when he saw Neil, he started shaking and he started whispering into my ear, that's Neil McDonough. That's him. That's him. And I was like, well, why don't you just go say hi? And he's like, no, I can't. He was like making up excuses. So I was like, I'll be your wing then. So I went up to Neil. I was like, hi, nice to meet you, Neil.
Very affable.
Very nice guy. Very nice guy. And I was like, Turpin here is a huge fan of yours. So they took a picture together.
Nice.
But it was so fun.
I think he was always,
You made Turpin's year right at that moment.
Yeah. He kept texting me about it afterwards, but that was a cool moment.
It is funny. Tawasin can be a little bit like that, eh, Dave? Like there's definitely, I think it's definitely a little bit of a who you know sort of community, but at the same time, like there's a lot of stealth bombers in terms of like people who may not necessarily be traditional celebrities, but you've got like some white spot people there, and you've got on the other side, you've got like people who have a lot of influence within Metro Vancouver or have a lot of capital. And it's like, okay, I used to MC the Delta Hospital Gala every November, and I would always joke that it was a packed room of 300 people they do every year at Tawasin Springs, and I'd always kind of laugh to myself and just think, I am the brokest man in this room, and it ain't even close. Just like there's some old money. There's some deep pockets. Yeah, it's interesting.
How do you guys know each other, by the way? Well, when was the first time you met?
Dave already just told you.
So I basically, because I've got a memory for faces, and I'm an Ottawa boy, as is James. And so we were sitting, basically our kids were playing soccer together, and I'd seen him in the community, but again,
that's the first time you met him?
Yeah, but I'd seen him when, oddly enough, we had seen each other in Ottawa, but just never, we did different circle of friends.
I thought when you said, I know, you had already met him before.
Yeah, and so our kids were playing soccer together. And as you know, I'm very shy and never speak. And James, you will notice, is very, reserved. And we ended up talking forever.
Yeah.
And
Dave introduced himself and we just started chatting.
Yeah. So I was still in pharma and then, we just kind of compared life notes and
because you were on the road a lot still.
Yeah. Kept in touch. And then I got packaged out of pharma and said, I'm going to go back to school and become a high school teacher.
I still remember running into you in the Costco parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were in Richmond. And that was one of the last times I've gone to the Richmond Costco. Yeah. Now I just go to the Surrey one because it's safer. It's safer.
It's something. It's an experience.
Here's a Cliff Clavin random fun fact. But there was a guy who recognized me, who was an employee at Costco years back. And, we'd chat every once in a while when I was there if he was working. And I remember him saying, I was like, oh man, it's always busy here in this one, hey? And he's like, this is not only one of the busiest in Canada or the busiest Costco in Canada, the Richmond location, but it is also the one of the busiest in the world. And he had noted that there had been, I guess, because they track the data and all that with the sales, and he had noted that there was a day at some point, like somewhere within the month from when we had talked, and this is going back a number of years now, but he had noted that It was probably, they were like top 5 in the world.
Really?
For like busiest Costco's.
No wonder.
That Richmond location.
Well, that's the one I go to because it's the closest one to us.
It's packed.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just stopped. I had a kid. There was always just bad vibes if I ever went. Like, there was a kid. My daughter, she had her head smashed with a shopping cart. Somebody going the opposite direction. She had her fingers pinched by another cart because it was just its tight squeeze. Yep. Parking was always murder. It was just, it's just like, okay, you know what? Costco can't be this stressful to go grocery shopping. So the Surrey location seems to be.
Definitely see the worst of people there.
A little more Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
That means no worries for those of you that are unsure.
Yeah.
Lion King.
Lion King. Yes, the original Lion King, not the live action digital remake. Yeah. But that's how Dave and I met. We met and Dave introduced himself. Our daughters were playing soccer together.
Did you grow up in Ottawa?
Yeah, East End.
Okay.
East End. So grew up in a neighborhood called Carson Grove, close to an area called Gloucester Center, which is, for anybody it's probably mostly West Coast people. Anyway, it's thousands of kilometers from where we are talking right now. And my dad was a police officer. And
a Boston Bruins fan.
And a Bruins fan. Yes, good memory. Yeah. So he was a cop, worked undercover for years. And I mean like old school narc, mid 80s, like sort of like TV show Vice kind of style, like long hair, beard, like did the biker look for a little while, then permed his hair and did the Miami Vice look for a while. At a time when there was a brief period in the 80s where everybody permed their hair. And I think we're seeing that a little bit with high school students. Yep. I haven't gone down that road yet. But yeah, and then, did surveillance and all that. Anyway, so he was kind of a kick-ass cop, and my sister became a cop, and then she married a cop, divorced a cop, remarried another cop. And her oldest son is now just in the process of finishing university out in Atlantic, Canada, and with the intention and goal of becoming, wait for it, a cop.
Oh.
I got
Didn't
two.
Surprise.
My aunt and uncle both worked as civilians with the police. Their 2 daughters are both civilians working for the police, and one of them married. Yeah, a police officer. Yeah,
Wow.
So
Is this
there's
older
a real
sister or younger sister?
Younger sister.
It is younger.
Yeah,
That's what
younger
I thought.
sister.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's so totally like daddy's little girl following in father's footsteps.
And you did not want to be a cop.
I had.
Or did you?
You know what? I had a conversation. I thought about it for a little bit, and then I thought about it for a fleeting moment coming out of high school. It was a thought, and then I took radio broadcasting in college instead. And I just think I at the time I would say policing in the 90s. I don't think I had the temperament. I wasn't a kick-ass sort of. I think you needed to be more muscle and more kick-ass in that sort of generation. I had a conversation, actually, I haven't told too many people this, but about 10 years ago, I'd gotten to know Neil DeBoard, who was the former chief of police with the Delta police force. And we had met at a few different events. And so he had known my story about family being cops. And he had asked if we go for a coffee sometime. And he said, hey, would you ever be interested in being a cop? And I was like, well, I was like, years ago. I'm like, I'm 40 now, and I think I'm kind of doing this. And he said, well, we are always we're looking for people with life experience rather than just young cowboys. I was like, oh, okay. Well, there was like an intake exam night one night, and I decided I'd go in, and just on it just happened to like within a week of this conversation, I was like, yeah, I'll go in and I'll write it. And it was like a 3-hour process or whatever. I went in. I think I had like the highest score of the last 6 months. I think I had the second highest score of the last 6 months. So like I scored really well, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I'm in. And and so I was in pretty good shape at the time. So I thought, okay, like my fitness should be all right. And I talked to my sister about it, and she was like, oh my God, like you're a communicator. That's what policing is now. And so and I should preface, like, ever since my oldest daughter was born, I've had in my mind, I want to make a difference in the world. Like I felt like I all of a sudden felt professionally from a broadcast standpoint that in the event of a zombie apocalypse, nobody needs to know the score of the Canucks and the Leafs, or Senators for that matter. And so I felt like I need to make a difference in the world. And I was trying to figure out what that. Now, initially, my first thought was I need to be a doctor. Well, yeah, it wasn't really a real scholar in terms of my math and science prior. And it just didn't really interest me. So anyway, but that was always like sort of a fleeting thought. And but just at some point, I'd like to make a transition. And so this going back almost 17 years now that I had this feeling. But for the longest time, prior to being remarried to my wife now, my previous relation, I was kind of the lone one working, and so you got mouths to feed and bills to pay. So it wasn't like there was an easy, I'm just gonna stop and make a move here. But I had this conversation with the chief, and I thought, okay, I'll give this a go, and then it came down to the physical application, and I just was going through it, and I was just like, you know what? I don't know if I want to put my whole life down on a piece of paper. Not that I've got not that I was a horrible human being and all that, but I just kind of, it was a 50-page application, and I was like,
really?
I didn't want to. Anyway, and so I had a moment for maybe a 2-week window in my life where I was like, I'm going to be a cop, and then I kind of looked at all of this. I wrote it all. I filled it all in, and then I just kind of looked, and I was like, do I want to fill this in or not? Or do I want to give this to somebody else to judge and look at me? And I was like, That
was it. The application.
And that was the application, and it went into the recycling bin or a paper shredder, and just kind of called it a day. And so that was about as close to as I pursued policing. So that was about it.
We'll compare notes sometimes when I joined the military. My same thing. My dad was a career officer and a senior officer, and joining the military and having to sit down and you write your officer boards. And
did you feel pressure to go that route?
I had an aptitude for it, and I did in the sense that, like, my oldest brother's further left than Lennon. Like, it's like ridiculous how he grew up in our house is beyond me. My other brother Don wanted to be a fighter pilot, but couldn't pass the medical, and so. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a go, and was really successful when I joined the primary reserves. And I was super interested, but then I can remember sitting, like, when you sat down, it's twice a year they do this formal exam, and and I can remember just looking around in the room and thinking, I was the youngest by far.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I was like, I would have been 18.
So were you 18?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how old is everybody else, like, on average?
They were there. Most of the guys were probably mid-20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can remember when I was successful, but I remember the interview, and it was like, that's the problem, right? When you're connected in the sense that, it'd be like you applying for your dad's, detachment, right? Like, the people already kind of have an idea. So, like, one of the guys knew my dad really well, and the other guy, he's like, I noticed you have an interest in politics and world affairs. So could you discuss the Iran-Iraq war, and what are some of the nature of, like, I was like, okay, I guess, sure. It was, it's a bit over oil. It's a bit over access to water rights and the Sunni and Shia. I was like, oh my, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Wow. And you were able to drop that. It's funny. I remember the intake exam. We had to take an intake exam for radio broadcasting. And there was like a lot of current affair questions. And so I was 18. Like, I was one of the youngest in the program to get in.
You're Ryerson?
No, Algonquin.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And
okay.
so... But I remember there was a question about Bosnia. Like, this is 1993. Like, 18-year-old. Now, look, growing up in Ottawa, like, we had a newspaper come to our door. I mean, I'd like to think I read the paper fairly frequently, but, like, and the news was on in our house. We always had talk radio on, and that was what we had on in our house all the time. Even if people were out the word, like, there was almost like a white noise always, sort of, And yeah, it was, but at the same time, like, as an 18-year-old to try to make that connection to kind of explain, like, in a show, in a medium form answer, like, can you explain, like, what is the main conflict? It was like, I'd be curious to look at that answer, like that test now.
Well, yeah, and it was like one of the questions was like, and said unironically is, well, could you take another person's life? And I'm like, well, like, yeah, at Costco, you ever park there? Like, yeah, that's no, but it's like, it's context, right? Like,
you know what's funny? I totally left this part out, but I did a ride along. I did a ride along. So further to that test, I scored well, and I went for a ride along, and so like kind of, it was wound up snowing that night, so it was super quiet. And it was like one mental health episode that we basically spent all night at Surrey Memorial waiting for this person to finally get looked at. So it was like,
but that's probably the norm.
I'm sure it's exactly the norm. And like, it just feels like what a drain on resources for like this one, individual who was late 50s, who basically was being babysat by, like a very, very, very well-paid individual to like, but that took that officer off the road for the, thousands of other people that,
right. There could be other people taking care of that.
That's it. That's where, so anyway, but it was doing that ride along. And I remember we were driving home late at night. And so this had to be like almost 2:00 in the morning now. And as we're heading back, coming back from Surrey Memorial back to Ladner with a department, I think, the officer had asked me, she said, do you think you could handle taking somebody's life? It was like kind of more anecdotally as opposed to an interview, but it was like, well, it's like, well, ultimately this job like kind of requires you to, it may come down to that, right? Yeah. It's a hard one to answer at that moment. It's like, well, I don't know, I try to exercise every other option possible. You kind of say what you want to say is the politically correct answer, but when they're not
looking to recruit Officer Tackleberry. Guns. When do we get guns?
They don't want necessarily Tackleberry, but at the same time, they also want maybe that. But they also, I think, want that person to be ready to, don't freeze up in that moment. Right?
Well, the military would screen you out if you answered right away. Yeah, absolutely, because they wanted somebody
would take somebody up.
Yeah, they wanted somebody who had given a reflective thought, and you wouldn't know until you're actually in that position, right? Like so.
My dad worked after he retired. He worked for a brief while as a commissionaire, and he was working up at CFB Petawawa as basically a dispatcher for the military police up there. And I think he really enjoyed the camaraderie. For the time that he was there, it was just too much of a drive from where they were living at the time, and but in the moment, he enjoyed the community and the camaraderie. And I think these military police officers loved his stories, and they all wanted to be either RCMP officers or Ottawa or Metro police officers in Ottawa, and none of them. All of them had all served at some point in either Afghanistan or in another tour, and all of them had been rejected because of mental health issues. Yeah, right. And so, but they were all given roles and occupations as military police, but they could not. None of them could pass the vetting process for an actual Metro or Mountie because of the exposures of what they had been exposed to. So,
So how did you end up in broadcasting? I mean, you went to school for this, but how did you end up there? Like, is it one of these stories where, growing up, I would stand on a table and speak to people, or I'd do interviews? Like, what is it? What got you there?
I think I always knew at a young age it's something I wanted to do. Lousy athlete, loved to talk. I just honestly, it was probably people that have known me long enough. Oh, shut the hell up, Cybulski, like blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, it's paid the bills and taken me places to where I could only have dreamt. Like I was 23 before I went on a plane. I'd never gone on it. We didn't, we were a middle-class family, and different times, right? Like not everybody flew in those days. Not now, not like they do now. It's not to say other people didn't fly, but we drove. We go to Florida every year, but we would do that as a 3-day drive down the I-95 and go through New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and then Florida. Like, that's a good run of states, doing that over 3 days, back to school, shopping at the factory outlets along the way. And so, I talked a lot, and it was just something I wanted to do. I liked playing sports. I think my dad was obviously big into sports, so that had a huge influence on me. And, watching hockey, watching wrestling, loving the NFL, basketball, baseball, boxing, back when boxing was like a thing still. Loved boxing, just fascinated by all of it. And so wanted to get into it and just wanted to follow that path. And, I did theater stuff in high school. I liked performing, and just kind of went down that road. And so I got into college and radio broadcasting, but at the same time, I had done a co-op placement, and I think they still do co-op in schools. And so I had a placement at a community television station, which was Rogers Community Television in Ottawa. And so kind of the jack of all trades, you're learning to set up cabling and lighting and, stationary camera but I wanted to get in front of the camera. So I would just jump at every opportunity I could to host something. I did a movie review for an IMAX film. I just remember that was one of the first things I did. And then I had a chance when I was 17, I was given the chance to do play-by-play for a pre-Olympic boxing tournament prior to the Barcelona games. Like I was 17. Like think about that. That's, kind of your grade 12s right now in the hallways. And I was given that opportunity, with all these Olympic boxers and, and I did it. I don't think I was very good. I might have a copy of it still somewhere on VHS, so I can't watch it because I don't have a VCR anymore. But that's where so all along the way, I continued to try to get my reps where I could, doing stuff. I called a karate tournament, touch football, or flag football. I called,
did you do
ringette.
Did you do baseball in Ottawa?
You know what? I think
they had a farm team, or
the Ottawa Lynx were there.
Lynx.
I did. I called a couple of games. I think we did a couple on radio, on college radio, and I think I want to say I might have done one or two broadcasts on community television. But I did more. I did more as a reporter, covering the Lynx back then, and I really enjoyed doing that. But I just anything I could have an opportunity to perform or to present, to get my reps. And then when I came out of college, I landed a job in the newsroom at a classic rock radio station and kind of worked there for 3 years and kind of worked my way up to kind of a weekend news anchor and then reporter during the week and kind of plateaued at a certain point and knew that I wasn't going to grow anymore, and then moved over to a news talk station at CFRA, which was the station that we grew up listening to in our house. And so that was a dream. And I had continued to do stuff at community television. So I'd built enough of an audition reel on the television side that a few months later, after I'd gone to CFRA, I got an opportunity to move to Toronto and start at what was Headline Sports at the time, and eventually became known as The Score, and now Sportsnet 360. But that's where, it was 98 was really kind of the growth, where I had gone from like living at home, making not a lot of money. My sister was a server and a bartender, and my parents kind of looking like she's crushing it, like making all this money. And my sisters were well on their way, moving out, going back and forth, living with friends, or my older sister living with her family, and here I was still grinding and trying to just kind of build equity for myself in the business. And then kind of fall of 98. Things took a turn and the trajectory started to climb from there, and off I went.
So you talk a lot about getting your reps. Is that really how you get good at this kind of thing?
I think it's how you get good at anything. I think it's just practice, and it's hard to try to. Not every kid wants to hear that. Not everybody wants to hear that, and it's just writing again or having to do and just working on your skills. But I think practice creates routine or just good habits. And, I'm not saying it never necessarily makes you perfect. There's that old practice makes perfect. I don't think there's necessarily a perfection to it, but I just think the more experience, and from a broadcasting standpoint, I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel. You think about the first time you probably hit record on this podcast, and I bet if you were to listen to yourself then to now, you probably are way more, you're way more comfortable, way more confident, and how you sound. And it's like anything. The first time you skate,
Kung's a perfectionist too, so he's making notes.
Oh, you make mistakes. You make mistakes. You keep going.
Yeah, and that's the hardest. That's the hardest thing to where, we are at a generation now. This is where I probably sound like a grumpy old man, but I was part of the generation. I'll give you an example, but I was 20 years old. I was a few months on the job with this classic rock station, and the sports director, he was very sharp-witted, very clever, and very good. And I remember him sitting me down for what was known as an air check. And that was just a critique, right? So recorded one of my sportscasts and played it for me. And we sat in this booth and he played it, and just the two of us, and he played it and I got through it. And I was starting to feel a little cocky. I was starting to get on the air, and I was reading these sportscasts on the phone, and but I was making some money. I was, wasn't making a lot of money, but I was working almost full time in radio, and I'm 20 years old. So, a little bit of stroke. I had a little bit of exposure on community television. So I was there was a little bit of a rub of like some familiarity. Every once in a while, somebody would recognize, and when you're 20, you're like, oh yeah, you would be, feeling like Ron Burgundy. And this air check, and I remember Joe Cummings, he just said, "You've been here for 2 minutes, and who the bleep do you think you are? You're not cool. You're not Darren Detition. You're not, stop trying to be somebody that you're not. Talk to me like a normal human being." Because when I think when I was in school and when I came out, I was kind of talking like this. I think I kind of felt like you kind of had to sound a little bit like, "Hi, everybody, I'm James Cybulski, and this is CKDJ News, and this is how I thought you had to talk." And, there are still
works
people
really well, actually.
Well, and for some people, they still kind of talk like that.
I'm
right?
Troy McClure.
Yeah, total Troy. Lead paint, tasty but deadly, and the metric system. And so like that was, and it was the only thing that stopped me from crying was the fact that I was sitting across from my boss, and it was the hardest thing I had to hear in a long time. I got yelled at as a kid every once in a while, and I had some teachers give me grief. But this conversation, it crushed my ego. Like any sort of ego that I thought I may have had was like dead. It was crushed. And it made me go back to the well or just reset and start talking like I am now. Now it's funny when people, you just have that broadcaster voice, and it's like, well, I didn't really plan it. It just, I don't know, you just articulate clearly and just have a conversation. And so, but that moment, I was 20 years old, and that was the critique, that was the constructive criticism. Now, it was very direct, it was very blunt. We can't really give assessment and feedback like that now. And I think there's a discretionary way to do that, but I think we as a community, we as people need to recognize that feedback and healthy critique or criticism is good, that it helps make you better. Mm-hmm. If it's delivered and handled the right way, I think it makes you better. And it's not necessarily an indictment of you failing, but it's more of, this is where you can grow, and this is where you can be. And I think sometimes being more direct is probably the easier way to go. And so that for me is something that long term, 30 years later, that was the best conversation I ever had in that moment that helped me get to a point now 30 years later. I am the play-by-play voice for the NHL video game because I am me. I won a Gemini Award 15 years ago because of me being me. I traveled around the world, covered Olympics. I went to Sweden. Never thought I would be to Sweden. Never thought I'd get to Poland. I never thought I'd get to Austria, Germany, Greece, Athens, Italy, being paid to go to these countries, having money paid out of their pockets to pay me to do that and stay in nice hotels because of me being authentic to who I am and talking and projecting and writing more genuinely as opposed to trying to be someone I wasn't. But in that moment, that was the kick in the A double crooked letter that I needed to set me straight. Does that make sense?
That's really interesting because now you're the model voice. I mean, I would say so. We've heard you in so many things that, and especially kids playing that NHL game, right? That's the voice.
Yeah, I mean, there's a mute option on that game too. So, but yeah, it's been I never thought I would see life kind of go the way it did, and Dave, you and I, we've talked over the years to where life takes you in certain directions, and you kind of sometimes have those moments where you're like, man, like what did I do, or you feel like you have these pitfalls and you get down and. But I think if you push through and you learn perseverance that, there's a friend of mine, his name's Bob Molly, and he was an Olympic medalist for Canada in the 84 Summer Games in LA. He was an Olympic wrestler and then became a Canadian Football League player, won Grey Cups playing for the Bombers. But he has a saying as a motivational speaker and has a book out called Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. Yeah. And I think that is such especially over the last couple of years, and especially like going down this path of education, that has really resonated with me. Just get comfortable being uncomfortable. I often say to young students, or prior to going down this road, like when I would speak to younger people or people asking for advice, like don't be afraid to fail. That's something I would always. And now, look, don't be afraid to bomb an exam. It's not necessarily stressing that, but it's okay to fail sometimes in life because it helps shape you for dealing with adversity going forward. I hate not to go down sob stories, but like I've been laid off before. I lost my job, and you kind of have that moment that's like, gut punch, and then all of a sudden you got all these people messaging you, telling you you're great, you're gonna be great, and then all of a sudden like the music dies down and nobody's calling, and you realize that there's not a lot of opportunities out there for you, and it's like, oh, now what am I gonna do? But you push on, and life happens, and same thing. It's like, your relationship ends, and how do you manage that? And, but it's just, keep going. And I, a good friend of mine, actually, we were talking about this, they were going through a bit of a weird time. And even he made the point that, over time, life balances out, right? You have the pitfalls, you have the ups, you have the downs. Life's never as good as the euphoric moments are, but it's never as bad as the crap. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember running into you in 2016, and it was right after the Great Bloodletting.
Yeah.
And the thing I love about you is what you see is what you get. You're a pretty practical guy. And I was like, hey man, you okay? Because I didn't really know how to breach the topic, and I didn't feel like we weren't intimate enough to have like a really, we were at Save-On of all places in the parking lot. And you were like, you know what? One door closes, another one opens. And I was going through this great revisiting with my work because I worked for, at that time, the worst human on the planet after having reported to the best. And it's just, we just philosophically just didn't see the world the same way. But I kind of knew in my heart of hearts it was my last stop in pharma. And I didn't see you for a couple of months. And then I got accepted to UBC. And it's funny, I had friends who were like horrified, like, you gave up what to become a teacher? You were the first guy I met, and you were like, you got to tell me about this. This is amazing. You're going to be great. And it was funny because it actually was validating, because I kind of realized after all of it that I've spent 17 years teaching doctors and pharmacists and all these other stakeholders how to use these complicated medications. But at the end of the day, my superpower was being able to distill a really complicated body of science into a short message that could be understood and then following it up. But really, I just built really good relationships, and that's much like teaching.
Don't you find? Yeah, I was just going to say, like the one thing I keep coming back to, I don't know if it's necessarily the right answer, but to me, do you not find like so much about teaching is just about connections?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is one thing
students, staff, material, like it's just connecting.
Well, in
connecting the dots.
In your classroom, if you can build those relationships, then it helps solve so many problems down the line. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's you whether you build trust or just build you get along with a colleague who, hey, is willing to help you or go that extra mile or whatever that looks like. And it's, I just, it's funny. I look at Dave and there, between Dave and, I hope he doesn't mind me outing his name on this, but Dave and Cam are Bancroft. You know, Dave and Cam, you guys are around the same vintage and just a couple years on me. And like, going down, when in 2021, I was at 650. I'd been there for 4 years. I did not enjoy it. It just, I think in all the years that I had worked at Rogers, and this isn't about just being critical at Rogers, but like, because there were some people there that I worked with that I really enjoyed. But it was uncomfortable in the sense that there was a feeling of unease every day going into the office, whether it was on the television side or on the radio side, that are we getting canceled? Are we getting fired? Are we getting blown out of here any day, any moment? It just, there was just this constant ominous cloud that just, and it's unsettling, and it's not a fun way to go to work like that every day.
Yeah.
And so when I finished up in 2021, and Rogers had offered me another position within the company, and I just was like, what's to say that in a year from now, like, we're in the same position? And so I opted for the package. I was in a position to where I was still doing the video game, and so that was a nice luxury in that respect too. And between Dave going down the road he was going, we had talked and hadn't really, obviously with COVID, you just didn't see anybody a whole lot, but knowing Dave going down that road, and that was the first time I thought to myself, like, wait a minute, like, maybe I don't need to be a doctor or a nurse to help people. Like, maybe I can help people, through communication. And so David kind of put the bug in my ear. Not that he said, oh, yeah, you should sign up, but it was more like, man, he's doing, like, I like his idea. He's doing it right. And then, hitting the tennis ball with Cameron Bancroft. And Cam is a teacher at Delta Secondary, but Cam, I watched, like, years before I met Cam, I was watching Cam in movies and TV shows. And so, like, the first time I met Cam at a charity golf tournament that he was a volunteer and a chairman with, and just, like, giving back, volunteering, going above and beyond, putting these hours in. Yeah. What a guy. And anyway, we talked about what he had gone down that road, and I was like, you know what? And like, between Dave, it was like this, there's clearly a reason I'm having these conversations.
There were signs.
There were just signs. And I just thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I just signed up. I jumped into school. I went to Langara, and I mean, that was a bit of a trip. Now, looking back, like I said, I had gone to college. I did not have an undergrad degree. So I basically crammed a 4-year undergrad in about 3 years. And
while parenting.
Yeah, while parenting, while working, paying the bills, and then got into my PDP program last fall, and here we are.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. It's like, looking back though, it's like, man, did I really? What was I thinking to go back for 4.5 years of schooling to, when you combine both, to do this, right?
Well, obviously,
I just hope there's a job at the finish line here.
It wasn't an easy transition, obviously, because of all the work that you had to do to catch up to, or change careers entirely. But what transferable skills do you think you bring to the table? Like, I mean, you have so much experience in broadcasting.
Well, I think I think the big advantage for me is, look, I've been talking I guess as a professional talker, working in.
You are, yeah.
And but as a professional talker, I think that gives me a huge competitive advantage to start out, because there are some people that are just natural and will step into classrooms and I think be very good, and that's great. But I do think that there is an element of just stepping in and being comfortable in front of the classroom. That's the one thing. And I hope I'm not sounding like I'm bashing other new educators and that, but I do see it like we get into these modules and groups and people that just are reluctant to engage or have to get up and speak, or they're shy and they're uncomfortable. And it's like, how do you do you realize what road you're going down here? Like, you're going to have to be in front of 30 people. Yes, they might be children, but there's still 30 people. Is that easier because they're kids? Like, is that because, I don't know, are you looking down on them that way? Like, I don't know. I'm a big believer of trying to talk to people the way you want to be spoken to. So that's my one big approach that I try to come at it with. But at the same time, I do think being comfortable to get up and presenting and trying to convey information or lesson or information in a fun and engaging way. I think for me, I've been a storyteller for, the better part of the last 30 years. And so I think I've always been a pretty good storyteller, at the risk of sounding cocky, but I've been a good storyteller. I think it's been reflective of what I've been able to do professionally and how many people were willing to hire and fire me over the last several years. Yeah. But at the same time, it's storytelling to a different audience. Yeah. And it's just a different way of doing it. So, I like having the opportunity to, I just did the French Revolution for the first time. Man, that was a blast. Yeah. And I was proud of the fact that, most of these students, I did like a summative assessment where students could build 8 social media posts that would connect using modern technology, using your social media proficiency skills to connect it to instances, demonstrating your learning with moments from the French Revolution from the certain periods. And so, it's funny because I had one class that was all into wanting to do that, and the other class was like, "Can we just do a test instead?" And we talk about trying to get away from testing, and it was like, "Okay, I'll tell you what. If you want to, you can do one or the other." And so, but it was great because the results overwhelmingly showed that, hey, these kids, they got it. They connected with how I approached it, or doing a unit on the Canada-U.S. trade war, and I think that resonates with students because it affected their lives. Now, I mean, they're not necessarily paying the bills or going to the pumps and all that, and seeing the extreme elements of it, but knowing that things are a little tighter and just being able to tell those stories. You can incorporate video, you can incorporate sound bites, you can incorporate social media, what that looks like. I mean, building some slides. I mean, I didn't know how to operate PowerPoint as of about 3 years ago, but man, I'm getting pretty good at it. And then Canva, I mean, I'm just learning to do everything with Canva now. So yeah, I think there's that opportunity to talk and communicate. And it's just, again, to me, I look at each lesson or each class as it's storytelling, just with a different audience. And there's a playfulness to it. Now, I think the education system talks about wanting to get away from us just getting out there and just delivering a sermon or a lecture for 90 minutes or an hour. But so I am mindful of that. But honestly, I can get up there and, for 20 minutes or 15 minutes, I feel like I can kick ass and provide some energy and engage students and then kind of turn things over to them. And that for me, and you know what? And maybe this is a terrible thing to say on a microphone, but it's fun for me too. I feel like there's I don't know. Why not? Why, you can have fun too. I mean,
if it's not fun, then I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, there. Thank you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I went off script today, and I came up with a series of provocative questions for my Socials 11, which is this extension of Canada in the 20th century. And one of the questions was, we abolished the capital punishment in 1976. So I said one of the provocative questions was, you either agree, you disagree, you could violently disagree or violently agree, but you got to pick somewhere and then be prepared to at least have some kind of an informed comment about it. It was amazing. But the one that really lit them was talking about, should we invest in the armed forces? And a bunch of the kids went to the one side as in no, because they didn't see the value of it. But all my international students, most of them from Europe, were on the yeah. And one of them, we got this German kid who very articulate, very smart. And he said, it's a contentious issue in our country because of our history, which fair. Yeah. And he said, but we also, proximity it's not that far from us, the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so if you placate Putin, what's to say we're not going to repeat, 1930? I was like chef's kiss answer. I was like, I'm so proud that he actually linked these together. But it generated an amazing conversation over a bunch of provocative questions. And some of the kids, they just don't get it. But it was good. And to change it up.
See, sometimes I love planning and I'm so organized, but sometimes the best moments are just like you said, when
organic.
You recognize we have a moment here where I can do something even better and making that adjustment on the fly.
My two favorite words over the last 3 months: teachable moments.
Oh, 100%. It's so true.
But further to that, it's funny. We did one about a month ago. We were using the graphic novel Borders, that short story from Thomas King, who was in the news this week as we record this. And he had been flagged by the school liaison that there had been questions about Thomas King's indigeneity to begin with.
Yeah.
So on the back of the unit, we watched a great documentary called The Pretendians. And so watch that, and then kind of, students were to write a paragraph, kind of their thoughts and how it connects. And, and then the next day I did a lesson. I took about 15 minutes to kind of present and share, and then left it with students to kind of write about it. But it was about Buffy St. Marie. And what I did was I played a couple of videos that just kind of had a brief bio who she was. So there was a documentary about her. So it was kind of like the trailer that kind of, clips from the interview from the documentary that kind of talk about what a force that she was and what a game changer. And this was a movie from about 3-4 years ago. And then there was, a quick bio I used from when Strombo had his old show, George Strombolopoulos, and just like a 60-second bio, and then a couple of clips from her on Sesame Street. So from when I was a kid, remembering, I visibly remember Buffy on Sesame Street. And so these little examples, and then sharing with them the Fifth Estate report, about how her indigeneity was exposed. And so kind of looking at both things, and to your point, to what you went down the road here, Dave, but the idea of, there's an element of deception there, but I linked it a little bit to where Lance Armstrong and the Tour de France, to where, does deception take away everything that she did that was good? Now, it's hard for me to speak on this in from a cultural standpoint.
Sure.
But in the 1960s and 1970s, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody in North America that had a louder voice waving the flag for Indigenous rights than Buffy St. Marie.
Absolutely.
And so, does that undermine all the good and the work that she did through deception? And, further to that, it's the same as Lance Armstrong. Now, Lance Armstrong turned out to be a pretty rotten human being in terms of how he tried to ruin people's lives to protect his secret that he was doping.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a few years that man inspired millions of people to spend millions of dollars in the fight against cancer. And everybody wearing those yellow wristbands for a while. And so you kind of pose that question to the students, and just some of the responses I got, right? It was very split and divided, right? Or it's she lied, and and should be stripped of every award, and and I think that's a fair response. But at the same time, there were also, hey, you know what? Yes, she was, she deceived people, but at the same time, man, there's a body of good that she did. So you kind of see it from both sides. And that to me, and so you talk about that sort of chef's kiss, you're like, yes, this is learning, this is critical thinking. It's one thing to kind of push through and all that, but when you have those moments to okay, this is that to me is okay, that's a connection.
It's not about coming to an answer, it's coming to an understanding. Which is amazing.
And sometimes and I think sometimes the best lessons are when there's no clear right or wrong answer.
Sure.
You know, whether, you know, and then that's like, do we need to spend more in armament? Well, you know, depending on who you're talking to right now, you might have a lot of people that say, you know, missile up. And then, you know, a lot of people, hey, look, man, like, we're a peacekeeping nation and let's keep it that way, right?
I don't do it anymore, but I used to wear a black band, mostly because I'm contrarian, and it said live wrong, which anyway.
Was that for an organization or
no? It was
a lot of hard feelings about the military experience.
It was a cycle group in Ottawa. One of the bike shops put these out as a sort of rebuttal to Lance Armstrong. But it was
live wrong. That's funny.
Yeah, live wrong. Yeah, but it was the one that provoked kids to ask, and then I realized I probably don't want to do that to kids. My whole point though of wearing it was just don't accept the status quo because you're told to. Mm-hmm. It's like think critically, ask questions. And for heaven's sakes, like ask another question. Like that's probably your best, you know, keep yourself safe that way. But yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've never saw one of those before.
Yeah.
If you're good, Cybulski, I'll take a look and see if I got an extra one somewhere.
I'll get me one too.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been doing it pretty well for the last half century as it is.
You were talking about learning from failure.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a big thing in your broadcasting life. In teaching, can you tell us a moment where something just completely bombed or partially bombed, or you felt like you didn't get through to the kids, and what did you learn from that?
Oof. That's a good question. That's a great question. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. You know, what immediately comes to mind is scaffolding. Mm-hmm. And I had an observation from, I want to say it was like my FA. And, you know, there were a handful of kids that were asking they were confused about an assignment, which I think happens every day, right? And, you know, you feel like you kind of spelled it out and you've given them written instructions and you've oral instructions.
There's so much we take for granted.
Yeah. And you just, you know, and I think a rule that we often used in media and broadcasting was, you know, assume the audience knows nothing when you're telling stories. And this by no means is meant as a comment to be dismissive or to look down upon, you know, students, but just when you're going into a lesson, you know, if you're going to teach, you know, come at the approach that assume the audience knows nothing. And so just learning to, like, you know, really keep it simple, you know, and I think even for some of the older students, when you think that, oh, okay, they're older, they know. I honestly, like, the biggest eye opener for me over the last, you know, especially kind of seeing how sausage is made through September and October. Mm-hmm. You know, I think as a parent or on the outside, it's like, what are we doing here? Come on, you've been in school for 6 weeks. Like, you know, give me a progress report. Let me see, how's my kid doing? Like, what the hell's going on there, right? Mm. But, you know, kind of seeing it like as a whole with so many students that just, you've been off for 2 months. And in one breath, as a parent, it's like, okay, you've had 2 months off. It's time to get learning again, like time to get that brain going. Yeah. But at the same time, just seeing it from an educator standpoint in a room of 25, 30 kids, like, this is going to take a minute. Now, maybe there's a handful of kids that are ready to push forward, and maybe for them it's kind of tricky because they're ready to go, but the vast majority are still, well, what's this mean again? Or what's that? Or they haven't written anything in months, right? And so it's just, you know, getting your chops going. It's, you know what, I think it's the same thing for us as adults. Like, if I haven't written a story in a while, or if I haven't told a story in a while, I'm going to be rusty, right? And it's the same thing as, like, why do they have training camp for pro sports teams, right? Yeah. To get that rust out before you know, they don't just start the season. Like, there's not really a training camp for school. You know, I mean, yes, there's summer school. People want to send their kids for that, but there's not a training camp to, okay, we're, you know, come into shape and we're going to do a couple of 2-a-days and we're going to have a scrimmage and we're going to have an exhibit. Like, we're just going to have some, you know, no, I mean, it's like you're bringing everybody back up to speed. And so kind of those first 2 months, and look, I mean, maybe I'll have a different perspective on this in 5 years from now, but I just think that has been a big eye opener to like, okay, like you got to take some steps here and start building people up. And then, you know, if you're in a semestered system, if you're a math teacher, what does that first month look like? That if you have a student that, let's say they were in grade 9 and they took math in the fall, and then it may be over a year or so since they've done any sort of math. Well, okay, maybe let's say you were a 75 student in math that's fairly proficient, like you're a pretty good student, you're doing all right. But if you haven't done math in a year and all of a sudden you're jumping into integers or whatever, and you want to start pushing through, like you kind of got to get back to basics, I'm guessing, for probably at least a month or so, you know? Yeah. And like maybe there's some of those parents that are doing great work, working with their kids at home and pushing them and trying to push them to extend, and that's awesome. But for those students that just that don't, like, it's, I don't know, like, I mean, and I think that's the vast majority. Like, I don't think a lot of parents necessarily have the time, like, some have the resources to send their kids off to tutoring and all that, but like for the kids that, I think a lot of people are just trying to keep their head above water.
Well, and classes sometimes, like if you look at math, it's not like you can go consult Math the movie, right? Like, there's although there is some good tutorials on YouTube and the like, but I think it's like I when I redo lessons, I usually at the end of the year collate what students have said, what landed, what did I notice, because I'm pretty critical of my own stuff. But I often, if I'm not sure, I'll bounce stuff off Kung or Turpin, and I've got Ensali, my people in the building, because I want it to be intentional and effective, because there's nothing worse than when a kid looks at you and you're like, oh, they are totally not buying what I'm selling, or they don't have a reference point, or there's a disconnect. So,
No, you're absolutely right about it. And it's not just academic. It's also, in September, it's like building relationships, like we were talking about earlier, getting to know who can do what stage they're at, all their backstory. Because that's one of the things that I took for granted when I first started teaching, was that like everybody's got a story. Every behavior and everything that they do in the classroom, there's something to it that you can't take for granted.
Looking under the hood has been a real eye-opener, right?
Absolutely.
Like just what kids are going through or something.
Sometimes you open that box and you're like, oh, I don't know if I wanted to know this because now I'm sad.
You're sad, or you feel like you want to help.
It gives you perspective on the fact that, okay, their life is completely different from mine. And, as long as they're in my classroom, I got to keep them safe. I got to make sure their needs are met. And this is why they come to school late, or this is why they're tired all the time. There's a reason behind that. And, when I first started, it would be, okay, this kid just doesn't like what I do. I take it personally. Or maybe it was, maybe they just don't have the intelligence for it. It's not, a lot of it's not that. A lot of it is, what happened last night.
Yeah.
Really.
What happened last night, or what's going on in their lives. It's funny, my wife, and not to be dismissive of any of that, because like you start learning, and like, we've got kids, and like you kind of go down that road and you're like, I mean, what's affecting them, and you go work through it, right? It's like with a newborn, like, all right, you got your 3, like, are they hungry? Do they need a bird? Like, why is my kid fussy right now? Are they hungry? Do they need a clean diaper, or are they gassy, right? You got to, work through now as you get a little older, it's like, okay, maybe there's a little more to it, but it's, I remember my wife actually has said to me a few times, and I think even, other teachers as well, it's like, don't just consume yourself with the kids that aren't doing the work. Embrace the ones that are. And I think that's been a really something to be mindful of. Here, can I throw this at you? You got, so I had a student recently complain that like, kind of like, you haven't given anybody an extending. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, proficient's kind of what the goal is.
I actually,
I'd be curious what you guys, I don't even know what the question is, but like, how liberal are you with extendings, or are you?
I could talk for hours about assessment, but it's.
I feel like this is the one that like assessment. This is the one that everybody kind of this is the one that's the hard.
Well, I don't even like the ministry language. Like, what is extending? I tend to use the word mastery for my, top of the tops.
Okay.
I don't typically give out marks in class. So there's a whole thing that we'll have a conversation.
Okay. All right.
But
because like in some theories, like extending is almost like beyond 100%.
Yeah. That is why I don't like the wording. Because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, and even like, and you know what's funny? I don't love I hope, ministry, just get me certified first, and I love everything you're doing. but like even developing, a developing mark isn't like, depending on where, like, it's not that bad, but I don't like the wording of it because it sounds like, because the kids look at developing as like, oh, I'm only developing. And it's like, no, you're not a bonehead because you're developing. Like, you're right. You're
where you should be right now.
Yeah. And it's like, look, a proficient is ultimately where you need to be. And then there's kind of that sort of subjectivity as, well, what is proficient? Like, where, and because there's still an influence of numbers and that sort of element. But I don't know. It's just like, And so extending it to me is like, okay, if to me proficient is like, okay, you're that sort of 80 to 100, you're an A student. Proficient is kind of an A. So like, did you get 100 and did you get 110?
Well, when they brought it in,
you got 103?
I can remember talking to Kung about this because kids were like, okay, so I'm proficient. So is that an A? What's the equivalency? Because they were so wrapped up in this. And I thought, oh, it's going to blow over. No, it was like a running gun battle for like 6 to 7 weeks. Anything you submitted out, they would take, but they wanted to, okay, so if what does this equate to in the old system? Like because they don't have a reference.
Well, I think parents are still, and like, honestly, like, because we're of the generation, we grew up with A's and B's and C's and D's and even E's. I remember getting some E's, right? Like,
Yeah. And that didn't mean extending then, by the way.
And I think it was even below emerging.
You got IE now, which is even better.
Yeah.
But
it was more egghead.
Yeah, I think the conversation is what you want to try to change in the classroom, because you want to sit down with the student and we need to talk about what are the learning targets that we need to get better at. It's about getting better. It's just, you like sports. There's a lot of sports analogies connected to being able to practice, being able to redo things, right? Because, like, do you grade an athlete? I mean, in some cases you do if you're scouting or whatever. But
that's what talk radio is for. They were terrible last night.
Right. But they always have a chance to practice more, come back to you and show them their stuff, right? There's always a chance for improvement. And this is what I try to do in the classroom. I want them to not just look at the number and go, okay, 73%, I'm good, I'm out, right? I'm good for the rest of the year. Or look at 73% and be devastated, right? There's that too. Because, my parents are going to kill me at 73%.
Totally.
So my goal in my classroom is just, let's forget about those numbers. I'm tracking everything, but I'm tracking everything by, how well you're doing in these learning targets. And then you guys come to me and we'll have this conversation about specific learning targets that we need to get better at. And, I could talk for hours. I've given workshops and, it's a really interesting thing. But assessment is a lot of what we do, and it drives a lot of what happens in the classroom. And it's really important to know, what you're trying to target.
So let me modify this. I'm keeping you guys way too long. At some point we got to feed kids here, but what would be the ideal wording? Would you keep emerging?
I don't know if I would keep, see, those are, you could use any words you want.
Developing.
The one that I really don't like.
Competent.
Like.
Over what?
No, I know. That's what I mean.
Or incorporated.
No, it's a slippery slope, right? Like, you got to be careful.
But I don't like extending. And that's what I know for sure.
Yeah.
Because we should be reaching mastery. We should be mastering things, right? Getting better until you've mastered it. Just like you would, if you're playing baseball and you're learning how to pitch or
give kids
whatever.
black belts.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you've really mastered the Industrial Revolution. Here is your black belt.
Yeah. And make them weave it on their own cotton gin. Wow, that would be there's your full circle.
Nice little tie in there on that.
Yeah,
well done.
Right. But in the end, it's about trying to get them to want to do better.
Yeah.
So,
no, honestly, it's like, and I appreciate where, how do we get extending? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers yet. And so because kids have been asked, I've tried to incorporate more bonus questions and try to, find ways for students to want to extend and create that. But but then at the same time, like, just because you did the assignment and was it great? I don't know. Like, is there such thing? It's like, I guess statistically there can be perfect numbers, right? I guess in perfect performances in sports, if we want to go. Mm-hmm. But, I think if you were to look at an actor or an actress and, is it a perfect performance? I'm sure every performer could watch something and say, I could still do something. Like, what one person may assess as perfect, we always watch ourselves, like if you had a camera or had a chance to go through the game film, watching your teaching performance, I would venture to guess that you would watch yourself and say, oh, I would do this over, I would do this differently, I would do this differently. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I there's not a single thing that there very rarely have I ever watched something or listened to something that I have done, and I use this from a broadcasting standpoint and say, I don't like the way my tie goes with this suit. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is wrong, or whatever it may be. Like there's those sorts of moments, right? And so
I've got one lesson that I've taught, and it's like my favorite thing in the whole world to teach, and it's the evolution of warfare from the Napoleonic era to World War I. And I use it as a backgrounder to get kids ready to talk about total war. And I love it, and I can nerd out about it for hours. And what I realized after my third go-around of teaching it was, as I was getting it more developed and polished, I was leaving some of the kids behind because it was too specific. And it was like, I feel kind of bummed because like the kids who really got it loved it, but trying to
and you almost in a mindset, you're like, okay, I've got you. Like, we're really gonna, But then there's, totally.
So I know exactly what you mean.
It's really easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah,
for something that you're really passionate about. Yep. But in the end, you have to remember that.
And when you find those students that they're picking up what you're putting down. But also trying to. It's funny. I felt really good about this trade war unit I had done about Canada, U.S. and all this moving parts and excited and kind of going through like, what did you like best, or did you like, and at the, got a little feedback, and like this one student was just like, I didn't like it. I found it really boring, and it was just, you kind of read it and you're like, and I remember we were kind of moving on, and I remember, you like it, I kind of said, how you doing? It's good. And, like, you're liking this one? And she's like, yeah. Is it more fun than the trade war? And she's like, yeah. And it's just like in my mind, I'm like I was at a point where I was at peace, where I kind of like could laugh at it, but at the same time, it was just like in the moment reading that, like, you feel like I am, or just connecting with all these kids, and like, no, you're not. One kid just shut up, Cybulski. Like, I am done with this. Can we wrap it up and do something more interesting?
That kind of thing was way more devastating for me 20 years ago than it is now.
Yeah,
right now it's like, okay, that's pretty funny, but I'm glad they're honest. Right?
Yeah.
At least they're able to be honest with you. So. That's great. I mean, we can't let you leave without talking about EA Sports. I would be killed.
What do you want to know?
How did you get into that?
It's funny. This just came up. There was a story about this just the other day we talked about. So 2018, spring of 2018, I was talking to a good friend of mine, Davis Sanchez, who TSN analyst now, played in the NFL, played in the Canadian Football League. One of Davis's besties, or a guy he grew up with, is a guy named Sean Ramjagsingh, who went to school in North Delta. And Davis and Chezzy played on the same basketball team that went to BC High School championship title game. And he was just saying, oh, I was talking to my buddy, and they're auditioning for a new play-by-play team, broadcast team for the NHL video game, and kind of rattled off some names that were kind of involved. And I was like, man, I would, like, colleagues and people they brought in, and I was like, man, that would be a dream. Could I, and I said, do you think you could ask your buddy if I could just take a swing at the plate if I could audition? Like, I would just love a chance to try out. Like, I'm not looking for a job. I just want to take a swing at the plate. And he said, sure. Yeah, no problem. And a few days later, I got an email from the legal department. So they went through all the protocols, went through the protocols. And so the legal department said, we'd like to schedule an audition with you. And so I went in. And, they just kind of, here, we're going to roll some footage off a monitor and go for it. And, kind of just did me some me. And, screaming pop culture references, having fun. And, I could see that a couple of the producers were laughing and the editor was laughing. And so I kind of felt good sign. All right, this is a sign like, okay, I think I'm doing all right. And, kind of left the building like, I don't know really what happened there, but I'm glad I did it. I had fun. And it was radio silence for about a month. And, I think I'd kind of forgotten about it in some ways, but I just remember it somewhere along the way. I was just like, I'm happy I did it. And a month later, I get an email from, somebody from EA saying, hey, just want to let you know, we've got a short list and you've made the short list. We should have, we should finalize things in the next 7 to 10 days. Like, wow, okay, still at the table. All right, I like it. And then crickets for weeks. And again, hey, I got shortlisted. Like, if nothing else, like, that's pretty cool. And I get another email about a month later, like, hey, we'd like to schedule a chemistry test with another broadcaster and you. Like, wow, okay, well, this must be serious. And so I went back in, a month later. So now this is a few months into the process, and I ran into Ray Ferraro, and Ray was there. And like Ray, we had worked together at TSN.
He's awesome.
Ray's amazing. Yeah. Ray is phenomenal. And so Ray and I, we went in, and it was like, oh, okay. And in my mind, I was like, okay, if Ray's doing, like, they're obviously serious about this. If they because I know they love Ray, and Ray was already, part of the game prior. And so, and he was, Ray kind of said, well, just keep doing what you're doing, because it sounds like you really knocked it out of the park the first time. And so we went in together, we had some fun, and then again, radio silence for another month. Just like, this is like through the summer. And so I get another call. Can you come back in for another meeting or another audition? And so now this is the third one. And it was like, oh my God, like, this must be really serious now. Or how much more? And I think they kind of went with, look, you're not a traditional play-by-play guy. You are not necessarily known as such. In America, you're kind of an unknown commodity. So like, there could be some pushback. Are you okay with handling that sort of thing? I'm like, absolutely. I've had enough people tell me I suck on social media, so I can handle
bring
that.
it on.
Yeah, but I was like, go for it, man. To do this, And they said, okay, well, we'll let you know in a week. And true to their word, like, it was the longest, most agonizing week of my life, because like every email, every text, every phone call was like, is this it? Is this it? And honestly, like, it was the full 7 days, and finally got the call, and they offered me the position. And, I've said this a few times, but I've been privy to do some really cool experiences to be part of professionally and personally in my life. But getting that call was really a dream come true, being part of a video game that I grew up playing, and then to be part of it. And, doing that, we're on year 7. My first year being part of it, they had signed Snoop Dogg as a guest commentator. And they cool. flew me down to Los Angeles
to work with Snoop Dogg.
Got to work with Snoop Dogg for 2 days. That were 2 of the best professional days I have ever experienced. It was, oh my God.
Seems like a really cool guy.
He was everything you would want Snoop Dogg to be. He was. And I would just say this, one of the coolest things, I had the utmost respect for him within moments that he sat down. And we had flown down. It was myself. It was Sean Ramjagsingh, the executive producer. It was the lead producer on the audio team, Dave Pritchett, and Tim Mellenbacher, who was also like an associate producer. And I think Tim's much higher now. But there was kind of the four of us that had flown down from LA. And then Snoop there was an audio engineer, I think from Snoop's team maybe, that was in his studio. It was his production house and production facility, which was a huge production facility. But, for the group of us that are in the room, and one of the first things that Snoop kind of said was, guys, I am not above being told what to do. And essentially, the better I sound, the better the game is. The better the game is, the better I look. We're going to go as far as we all go together. And so, listen, you tell me what you want, and I'll help deliver what you need. And there's a lot of improvisation, and there's a little bit of scripting, but mostly a lot of improvisation. And so,
that's cool that he would set that norm.
He said that right out of the gate, and I just thought, wow, and you think about what somebody like that is worth. We're talking about a guy who's well into the 9 figures in terms of his career earnings, right? And so,
and he's a brand.
Yeah,
And
I mean, here he is. He's on The Voice now, and just how he has diversified his opportunities and talents and his brand. But here he was, contracted to work with us for 2 days with the game. And, for me, he took a lot of breaks. Don't get me wrong. He took a lot of breaks and had a lot of handlers. But at the same time, like when we were sitting down, we were chatting, he was awesome. Like I said, he took direction. He was funny improvisationally. Like he did not miss a beat. But at the same time, everything that you think that Snoop Dogg is or was, he's what you see is what you get. I honestly, that was exactly it. Had a great conversation about the movie Half Baked that he had the cameo with Dave Chappelle, and just talked about the improvisational elements of that. We were both huge Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fans as kids, and we were talking. It was the Raptors were in the finals against Golden State that year, and this was 2019, and we were talking about this and that, and he's obviously a big Lakers guy, and I remember just saying, I got started, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the guy I started watching basketball for, and I just remember he kind of looked at me, kind of, give me the sort of people's eyebrow, and he said, I'm going to show you something, after, and I was like, okay, and anyway, we wrapped up for the day, and he left the room, and kind of thought that was that, and didn't really think much of it from our earlier conversation. He came back 10 minutes later, and he had a jewelry box. He opened it up, and it was 2 of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's All-Star rings.
Oh, wow.
And one was from 1970. Kareem had auctioned this stuff off in the last few years. And one was 1971 All-Star ring, and that was representing the year that Snoop was born. And then he had the 1985, and I believe that was the last year that Kareem had been there. But anyway, so kind of bookending these 2 All-Star rings, but he was like, that was my guy too. And so I just kind of, I guess we're kind of around the same vintage, and just, talking about Straight Outta Compton and talking about the movie, but also like, when I was, 15 years old, like, I loved listening to some NWA and Ice Cube and Easy and Ren and Dre and Yella, and just, asking him like how authentic was the movie, and just how he kind of relayed. He said, it's probably 85% accurate, and the only reason why what's missing is because Easy's not alive anymore to kind of, verify his side of the story. Right. But he said, man, kind of what you see is what you get from that movie, and that was, his sort of approach. And so I thought that was really cool. Just having some of those conversations that I just, they're just in the memory bank, and just some fun laughs.
Are you allowed to dish on one thing if I ask you a question? Right. I don't want you to have to betray something.
Okay.
I met Ferraro once, And he struck me as a super articulate, which I think there's a perception most hockey guys are jocks, right? But Ray was really like insightful and thoughtful and like really, I was like really impressed. But we were at the Kingston before a Canucks game and Dave Pratt was there.
Okay.
And Pratt said something to Ray. And Ray, I was just making polite small talk and Ray was super friendly. But Ray turned and said something to Pratt about his leather pants, which Pratt looked like he was going to have like a kitten right on the spot. Mm-hmm. And he just looked at me and he went, you got to know your audience. Like, and I thought I would never want to argue with Ray because I think I would, like, he would savage me because he's got that clever. And people like, oh yeah, no, like he's like one of the great smack talkers.
Ray, oh yeah, no, like he like wow. Full on like quick, very quick witted.
Yeah.
And I think has a bit of a. There's a bit of a natural curmudgeon to him by nature.
Yeah.
I think he enjoys life. I think he's very happy and, but like, I think he is very, it's it's a little bit of that Dr. Banner and the Incredible Hulk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever seen Ray snap on somebody or go sideways, but I think there's always a simmering.
Yeah. It doesn't
if you're going to give it,
sure.
It's going to come back, and Ray's still in great shape, and I just think that Ray has always maintained, very quick-witted. It doesn't seem like he burned too many brain cells, and in terms of how he lived from his his playing years and all that, but just very sharp, right? And just how he processes the game, and obviously has stayed well involved with his son who played in the National Hockey League as well, and so staying involved in the game on so many levels. For so long. And so, but at the same time, I think there's also a temperament, depending on the family you come from, to be quick on your feet. Now, I don't know what the hierarchy is in terms of siblings for Ray, but I don't know. Like, we come from a very sarcastic household. And so, and we're now and being in a blended household now, it's, I think my daughters probably handle it better than my stepdaughters handle my sarcasm, right? And learning, and sometimes like, I don't know when he's joking or not, right? And and I have to be mindful of. And it's funny because like my humor, a lot of sarcasm, and so it's also I try to be very mindful of it in the classroom because some kids will get it quick, but some like sometimes like just when I'm taking attendance and I'll just give a kid a stink eye, and they're like, why are you staring at me like that? And it's just like. And now it's like over the top sort of, and it's like trying to see if they're going to crack up. And some of them kind of get it, but you can see that sometimes they just, or just kind of give them the fingers, looking at pointing at them like I'm watching you kind of thing. And they're like, some get it and some laugh, but then there's some that are like, why are you picking on me? Or and it's like, okay, it's like, okay, I gotta
know your audience.
Know your audience.
That's why you build those relationships.
Yeah,
you can
exactly
have like, my daughter and I roast each other all the time.
Oh, it's awesome.
And it's
spectacular.
It's something. It's
it's like, I'll say like my youngest daughter, it's all of them, like they're all starting to get a little sarcastic. And it's funny, the first time my wife Brenda met my family going out east, like the day of, and Cindy, sorry for telling this story, but like my sister was getting ready to go away for a few days on, I think going to the police college for a few days for some training and all that. But my dad was needling her and just teasing her. Now, Cindy's been a cop for, well over a decade at this point in time. And like, here's my dad, and, just kind of teasing her. And there's my sister who was already probably a little stressed about leaving the family for a little bit. And all of a sudden, she comes around the corner, tears are eyes, he doesn't know when to stop, right? And like, here's Brenda like, holy, what is going on here, right? And so like, just, we needle each other, we kind of tease each other and having fun. And it's, I definitely had to try to dial it down, but at the same time, like I love the fact that, my younger daughters now, they have thickened their skin and their spine to where one used to cry out a lot and now is like kind of, like water off a duck's back and or just serves a nice poop emoji back to me.
Yeah. And that's one of the pleasures of teaching, really. Just the banter every day.
Yeah.
Because you know these kids.
Yeah.
Right? If you build a rapport and you're able to be that comfortable with each other.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the fun part. And like one thing, just trying to get to know kids, right? Ask them, find out, kid playing soccer or a kid, doing dance or whatever. And hey, what's going on? Did you win over the weekend? Did you play? Did you play hockey or tournament or, what's going on? Hey, did you watch this? Yeah.
Well, it's been awesome talking to you.
Thanks. Yeah. We blow through the...
No, we went like an hour and 40 minutes. This has been smooth sailing.
80 minutes. That's why I laugh at 80-minute blocks now.
I have to say, a little bit intimidating. You're very comfortable with all of this, obviously. Yeah. And there's a bit of gravitas you come in with the microphones and talking and the skill that you've built up over time. So I've learned a lot just from being here. Yeah. So thank you for that.
I just think I think authenticity is the big one. Right? Mm-hmm. Just be yourself.
I'm the handicap for Kung. I bring him down.
Absolutely not. No, you cheer me up every single time.
No.
Absolutely.
Wah.
Yeah.
You're Debbie Downer?
100%. Yeah.
Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
You know what we could get her for the holidays?
What?
A wet blanket.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
Wah.
Yeah.
Or you save those for admin.
Yeah.
Let's save it for a minute.
Yeah. I actually no, I can't do that. I can't. I gotta suck up to everyone here. That's like
right. For now.
Here for now.
And then you'll be here for 20 years and you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Just kill him in kindness in the meantime, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Yeah,
really good.
I feel like you kind of scratch the surface on some things, and
absolutely
you go, do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.